Our next guest may not be the most popular, but he's definitely very needed. Whether you're selling your house or buying one, the inspector's opinion carries a lot of weight in the overall process. Chad Borah runs a home inspection business, and he's here today to help us understand more about what really goes on behind the scenes in the inspection world. So welcome, Chad. I'm so glad you could join us. I mean, I know you are popular. Actually, you're very likable. Everybody I know loves you. But truly, the inspector, it's kind of a dreaded word, dreaded person to both the seller and the buyer, right?
Yeah, I would say it's easily the least favorable part of the transaction.
It's hard.
It is. There's a lot of emotion on both sides and a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's the price, agreeing to a price, but that's usually the easier part.
Right.
Because in the inspection process, for the buyer, you're coming up with a list of things it's everything that's wrong with the house, right?
Yep.
And so they get nervous, and the seller's like, well, this house is perfect for me. That's not wrong, right? You get that.
Yep. The seller, I think, there's a number of things playing in. They're worried about what we're going to find out. They're worried just having us in their home.
Yeah,
right?
sure.
It's invasive. The buyer, oftentimes one buyer can be interested in finding everything we can about the house.
Right.
And the other buyer is scared to death that we're going to find anything about the house.
Yeah.
Right? And not...
Because they love the house
They love the house so much.
They're already emotionally connecting, and they don't want to know that there's a problem.
That we represent a threat no matter what. Yeah.
Kind of like dating, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. We don't want to know the bad stuff because you look so good, right?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I think the inspection, we call it the moment of truth, and that may seem extreme, but that's what it is. There's so much emotion wrapped up in it, right?
Yeah.
That you have a vested interest, and you have to pay someone to be objective there and give you the information you have to be confident moving forward.
Yeah, so, a lot of people blame the inspector for ruining the deal, right?
Yep.
So does that happen, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it does to a certain extent. There are some inspectors, I mean, we're put in a tough position, so it's natural for the inspector sometimes to start covering themselves, right? Becoming very defensive and wanting to find everything. They can find value in painting things in a very negative light. And so when a buyer hears that, but the majority of the time, I would say that it's just a matter of, it's an opportunity to get out. And so it's not specific to the information provided in the inspection.
Yeah.
As much as it's just a doorway or avenue out for the buyer once they have the info.
Yeah, because what a lot of people don't realize is that that's typically, on most real estate contracts in most states, that's an opportunity where the buyer can change their mind. And it's usually the only opportunity in a contract. So they are still maybe on the fence, and that's part of the problem, is it becomes a very important week of time when things could go a different direction for both the buyer and the seller. Yeah. So what about a seller bringing in a home inspector before they put their home on the market? That's become more popular. Is that something that you recommend?
Highly, and I'm excited that it's becoming more popular. I mean, you mentioned it early on, but as soon as you have a contract, the weight shifts to the buyer in the negotiation. And so I think if the seller has that information in advance, it maintains a stronger position in that negotiation.
Yeah.
Additionally, the seller doing that inspection in advance can relieve some of the tension and uncertainty. Right? That fear that they have about what's coming up in the inspection, what are they going to find, and they can feel comfortable knowing I've had somebody look at this just like an inspector will for a buyer.
Yeah, so they're more in control, and they can get those repairs done.
Much cheaper, they can get the repairs done, and they can be prepared for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of sellers are worried about having that inspection because either they don't want repairs, they don't want to spend money at that point because they may not have to, let's say, or they're going to have to let people know now what's wrong with the house, right?
That is the most common, I think, is well, now I'm going to be forced to disclose.
Yeah.
And if you look at the seller's disclosure in most markets, the things that we are going to find in the inspection are not things that are going to influence that disclosure. And to be honest, if they're large enough that they will influence the disclosure, you're going to want to know them in advance.
Yeah.
Before you realize them in the transaction.
That's a really good idea. So in addition to hiring your inspector before you go on the market, get a copy of that seller's disclosure so you know exactly what you have to say about your house.
Right, because I think it's really a good move to keep that information to yourself. Like, I don't recommend doing a lot of repairs based on our pre-listing or pre-sale inspection, because I think it's important to leave some low-hanging fruit for the next inspector.
Oh, that's
There's
interesting.
just an element of, as an inspector, you find value in finding deficiencies in things, and that's one of the things that makes people hate us.
Okay.
So if the deficiencies are still there, they're not going to look as hard to find that next thing.
That's interesting. So leave a few things, because if the inspector for the buyer is not finding anything, they're going to dig even deeper.
They're going to dig even deeper, and you're prepared to negotiate. You're prepared to see what they come back with. And another element that oftentimes if you disclose the pre-listing inspection or share it,
Yeah.
then it becomes like two inspectors having a competition on who can inspect the home better.
So you don't agree with releasing that information before going to market?
I think there's lots of ways you can go to market, but that's the way I would normally do it, from an inspector's perspective, is keep that information as a seller close to my chest.
Okay.
And then when they start playing their cards in the negotiation, you have a much stronger position to say, I respect your position, but we've had a professional do this as well, and we've got estimates in advance. Your request for $10,000 is silly. We're going to get it done for $2,500.
Right, because we've already done that homework, right?
That's
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so how do you find a home inspector? We have about 30 seconds left. What's the best way to find?
I think the best way is through the real estate community and through your realtor. You're trusting the realtor to guide you through this transaction, and it's important to leverage their experience with inspectors in that community to know who does the best job.
So tap into that real estate network.
Yep,
all right,
for sure.
Perfect. All right, Chad, thank you so much for joining us today. You're always a font of information, and you'll be more liked because of it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. We love talking to Chad Borah, and he definitely tells it straight, but you can tell that he isn't the mythical home inspector that we sometimes fear. Thanks for joining us today on Real Life. Keep coming back to meet more of my friends and to hear great tips for your real estate moves.